All right, NAL Playdate number 8 recap. First game of the day was Dark Zero versus Oxygen. This one was a little bit of a surpriser. Dark Zero taking down Oxygen 7-4. Not the biggest shock ever. Of course, Dark Zero, I think, had a decent shot, but I would say Oxygen were the favorites coming into it. The most surprising thing maybe about it was the fact that we went to Oregon and Dark Zero took down Oxygen. It's pretty well Oxygen's best map. They haven't banned it at all this stage. They played it once against Beast Coast, and that was pretty brave of Beast Coast. They only got 2 rounds against them. Maybe it could have been a little bit more if they played a little bit tighter, but still 7-2, very dominant scoreline. And Dark Zero, the only time they played at this stage was against Astralis, and Astralis, very good team, but they did end up losing to them. It was in overtime as well. So a loss for Dark Zero, but a close one against a good team, and then Auction, a stomp versus not a bad team by any means, but more of a middle table team at the moment. And Dark Zero winning this does keep things pretty competitive going into the major. This stops Oxygen from instantly locking in major qualification and keeps Dark Zero's dream of going to the major more alive. So let's take a look at the round breakdown here. First round goes to Oxygen, and then we see a couple from Dark Zero, another for Oxygen, Dark Zero, Oxygen, so 3-3 half. Nothing too crazy. Oregon can sort of swing either way at this point. Dark Zero gets a round and another round. They're up by 2. Oxygen gets 1. Dark Zero 1 more, and they're up on match point, and then 1 more secures them the game. 7-4, so not super dominant, but again, a little bit of a surprising result, taking down Oxygen, who had been extremely good thus far this stage on their best map. And community prediction, yeah, 18% for Dark Zero. Maybe I'd give them a little bit more. They had decent amount of upset potential, and obviously they did upset here by beating them. And it's not like it went down to round 15. It was once more a fairly convincing win for Dark Zero. So taking a look at the stats here, Laxing and Dream on top. Everyone else not doing too hot over on Oxygen. And Vertical, sort of a surprisingly bad game. 5-8 isn't the worst thing in the world, but considering how well he's been doing this stage, it is very, very lackluster. Another not so hot game from Newers. We'll have to see if he can bounce back in the last playday. And then Foxay down here as well. Hyper, another quite good game. He's had some okay games and some quite good games as well, maybe being slightly overlooked. And NJR just continues to be solid. Canadian continues to impress statistically as well, and then Eclipse and even Pambazoo getting in on it, and I suppose even Pambazoo isn't the right way to put it. He's had a lot of really good games. He's also had some poor games, and then Eclipse playing this hard support role. It's nice to see him getting his stats up a little bit as well. And okay, let's go on to the next game of the day. Second game of the day, Sonics versus Space Station. This is a banger looking matchup. Maybe not quite as much coming into this one considering how bad Sonics have been this stage and how good I suppose Space Station have been this stage as well on the other hand. And I mean, this was sort of a shocking result. Sonics were on the up and up, but you might have thought that Space Station would take this. They really needed to take this to make sure that everything was in their hands in regards to going to the major. But okay, it is Sonics taking down Space Station. I believe Sonics were the only one to take down Space Station back in stage number 3. And since then, I suppose they outplaced them in the NAL finals as well, not actually directly playing them though. All right, we go over to Chalet, and this is pretty well, I think, Sonic's best statistical map from last year. And I mean, they were good on Coastline, they're good on Consulate, both those maps are out. They're also good on Oregon and Clubhouse, but it is Chalet that we go to. Space Station pretty good on Chalet as well. I just thought this was a little bit questionable to play, especially considering Space Station banned Bank and Clubhouse. Maybe they were scared of something regarding Sonics on that map. Space Station had taken a loss versus Beast Coast, and they've showed it quite a lot, and then Clubhouse, Sonics are quite proficient, but these are the only times that Space Station has banned these two maps, so it seemed a little bit strange to ban these two and then go to Chalet in the end, and then also Skyscraper, I suppose. Maybe Space Station really just doesn't want to play it, but we did see Sonics play it in the first playday, and they got crushed by Astralis, so maybe a little bit weird of a map ban phase, and I mean, as you can see, it kind of came back to bite them. Might not really have been to do with the map. Several of their players, pretty much everyone except for Fultz, really didn't seem like they were playing up to their full potential. So let's look at the round breakdown here. Sonics, Space Station off the back of a 1v3 clutch by Fultz, and then Sonics, Space Station, Sonics, so 4-2 lead, and the only reason it's not a 5-1 is, again, because of that big clutch. And then we switch sides, another round for Sonics. Space Station gets 2 in a row, and then 2 more for Sonics to close out the game. 3% of the voters for Sonics, and yeah, they've been poor this stage. I think that's a little bit too harsh considering they did put up a good performance in the previous 2 playdays, right? Even though they didn't get wins in those playdays, they were solid score lines against solid teams, so 97% maybe is a little bit too generous, and well, it did come back to bite the voters, I suppose, and well, Space Station did not win it, and everyone going pretty well nuke on Sonic, maybe not quite nuke, but yeah, Kansan went crazy, so did Grixer, I suppose, and then Rexon and Yeti quite good, and then Super, I mean, the 0-7, but whatever, you got the dub, I suppose, and then over here, sort of the opposite, only Fultz doing at all well. 11-7 and 2 1vx clutches is massive. But Skies has been incredible this stage, but not a good game for him. And everyone else far worse than him, even Rampy, Bosco, and Hot and Cold on the very bottom here. Bit of a brutal match for Space Station. By the end of the day, it's not the worst thing ever, because Beast Coast do end up losing and sort of the other results. So, I mean, maybe a little bit of a spoiler, but probably not really because you're watching the recap video now. Because of the way the results go in this day, it just comes down to Space Station versus Dark Zero in the last play day. Winner of that, regardless of the scoreline, regardless of overtime, regardless of anything, the winner of that will go to the major. So not the worst thing in the world, but they... you know, maybe they could have been in a slightly better spot if they'd taken this game. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Third game of the day, TSM versus Parabellum. 7-4 victory for TSM, so it's nice to see them get a few more points on the board. At the end of this day, it actually is fairly competitive. I suppose the top of the board, several of the teams are pretty close in terms of points, but also the bottom of the board with 2 teams on 7, 2 teams on 6. So in the last play day, maybe the bottom 4 teams in the standings could be rearranged in some sort of way. So you're playing for more SI points, you're playing for just points over the course of the year in general, so you're not playing for nothing. And certainly, I mean, you don't want to end up in last place. It just feels bad, right? So TSM over Parabellum. Let me see the community prediction, actually. Yeah, it's even a little bit of a, not a shocker, but yeah, I suppose Parabellum were sort of the favorites. They had, I mean, I think, what, 7 points coming into this game, whereas TSM had 4. And then after this game, they are on the same number of points. So yeah, just based on the whole points thing, Parabellum got more on the board, and TSM had just been playing just uncharacteristically poorly, especially Bolo. Yeah, he just continues to struggle. Let's take a look at the round breakdown here. Okay, TSM get a couple, and then Parabellum, TSM, Parabellum, Parabellum. So 3-3 half, that's pretty decent for Parabellum. Getting 3 rounds on the defense of Chalet is nothing to sneeze at. Big Penguin 4K coming out in this round, and an Eska clutch here. So this maybe indicates that if you disregard the clutch potential of Parabellum, then TSM is really the one dominating this game. They just need to clean up a little bit, and that's sort of what happens in the second half. So TSM, Parabellum, TSM, they're already up on to match point at 6-3, and then one more to or no, not 6-3, right? Isn't this, that'd be 6-4, right? So 7-4 victory, and taking a look at the stats here, it's Penguin on top, and then, you know, these two not doing too bad, and then Kool-Aid doing a little bit worse, and then Wimpy doing quite poorly. Yeah, he's sort of fallen off, unfortunately. We'll see where his stats conclude at the end of the stage, but yeah, unfortunately, the Wimpler, not the absolute god that he seemed to be at one point. And Chala, the one really popping off here. This is maybe not always, but Chala seems to really pop off on this map in a lot of instances. We do see more smoke play than frost play, but he is sort of known for the frost. Maybe he pulled it out in a few rounds, I don't quite recall. And then Merc doing well as well. And then achieving Bolo right around the 1.0, and Bolo, or achieving Geo rather, around the 1.0, and then Bolo, another struggle game. He was on like 6-3 or something at one point, and then he fell all the way to 6-8. So, and I think that is right around the time that they switched to defense. So Bolo continues to be atrocious on defense, which I think is a little bit weird considering he was always sort of known as that really strong positional player. One of the things he was really notable for was playing behind a deployable shield in particular. There's that clip of Canadian talking about him doing all this crazy stuff. And so, I mean, that sort of strikes you as maybe he's a really strong player on defense. I don't know that he's necessarily been playing behind the shield. I think Geo does a lot of that on this team. I'm not 100% sure how often Bolo actually does it. But yeah, just for some reason, he's way better on attack than defense. And he is so bad on defense that he is, what, like the second lowest rated player in the league right now, ahead of only Super, who is, I mean, the IGL hard support for a team that's been doing poorly. And Bolo is one of the main fraggers for, I guess, a team that's also been doing poorly. Okay, so I suppose that's enough about that. Let's move on to the next game. Mirage versus Beast Coast. So the 3 games before this were sort of upsets. I mean, you could see Dark Zero beating Oxygen, you could see Sonics beating Space Asian, and you could certainly see TSM beating Parabellum, but this one was a wild shock. Mirage beating Beast Coast, and it's not the farthest cry of all time, but do keep in mind Mirage is playing with their coach here. So Razor, who I think up to that point had been their statistically best player, is being subbed out for their coach for personal reasons. It's not anything to be terribly concerned about, but or maybe it is. I don't know what the personal reason is, but nothing to be concerned about in regards to the team chemistry and all this stuff. Right, but they take them down 7-4, and I mean, just one wonders how it happened. I mean, you can, when we look at the scoreboard, you'll see how it happened, but how those numbers were allowed to happen is a bit of a mystery. So we go to Border, and I don't think Mirage had played on Border, but Beast Coast had. They played, Parabellum on it. They beat them 7-5. It was a pretty close game, and they had to clutch out the very last round to avoid overtime, at which point maybe they would have lost, maybe they would have won, but no, they did end up winning, getting the full 3 points. And looking at the community prediction, not the biggest, not the most skewed one ever, but 8% versus 92%, definitely a massive upset in the eyes of the community. Okay, looking at the round breakdown. So Beast Coast take the first round, but Melted got 4 kills. He could have maybe got the ace, but Drips in a 1v2 against Melted, and I don't recall who the other player is. Benji, maybe? It was the Finka player. And they both get down by a Capcan trap or 2 Capcan traps or whatever. This is right after he Finka boosted, so they're just laying on the ground, and then Drip comes around the corner, he sees one, kills him, and then he comes back around the corner right as the Finka picks herself up and kills the Finka. So, I mean, he didn't actually like win either of those gunfights. It was sort of like a 1v0, but he did have to, you know, notice that they were down. So unfortunate, they could have maybe taken this first round Mirage, but I mean, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter. They still end up winning in regulation. Mirage takes this round, this round, this round. Mirage, for some reason, has been way better on attack than on defense, which is a little bit weird. Maybe it's not as hard to be good on attack anymore because of attack repick and whatever, but you still do have to be, you know, pretty well coordinated, whereas defense, you can be a little bit less so. Yeah, you don't have to rely on strategizing with your team as much, but in a lot of situations, yeah, sure, you still do, especially when the attackers are doing so. Okay, so Beast Coast take the next 2, so they shore it up. It's a 3-3.5, and now Beast Coast going on to the attack. Border still, I think, remains defender-sided for some reason, but I still imagine it's going to turn attacker-sided eventually. But okay, for now, maybe it's a disadvantage, but I think in theory it should be an advantage to be 3-3 going on to your attacking side. But Mirage gets 2 rounds, and then Beast Coast gets 1, Mirage gets 1, and they're up on match point. They get the next round. So let's look at those stats that I was alluding to. Drip has another quite good game here. Surf, another good game as well. Sweater really struggling. Same thing with Slash, and Anthony to a slightly lesser extent. Melted popped off though, and so did Thomas. I think Melted, if we go back, he got a 4K in the first round and then a 3K in the second round. So there were, I guess, 11 rounds played in the game, and so 9 rounds after those first 2 rounds. So over the course of those 9 rounds, he only got 7 more kills. So he really slowed down. But Thomas got, 15 kills. Yeah, Thomas really going crazy, and Melted going really crazy in the first 2 rounds, and it's enough to secure them the game. And actually, 4 of Melted's frags were impactless in terms of winning rounds because they ended up losing the round in which he got a 4K. So only maximum of 10 impact frags. Marmalade doing quite well as well, and Guerra kind of struggling, and Benji as well. Not the worst, 0.77, 0.75, not the worst thing ever. And I mean, I guess you're perfectly happy to get the win and watch your teammates get this amount of frags. I mean, 29 kills between 2 players in only 11 rounds is pretty massive. I'm looking at these KPRs, yeah. So I just don't know how Beast Coast let it happen. They were just uncoordinated. They kept giving them 1v1s, and they kept losing the 1v1s. And it's not like Beast Coast is slacking on the gun skill, the prowess. Surf has proven to be an extremely lethal fragger. Sweater is known for that kind of thing, and I wouldn't say the other guys are slouches either. But yeah, they just didn't play well. Maybe this was not the correct map to take them to. Maybe Border is one of those maps where a weakened team can still, if they just win some gunfights, they can end up taking the game. And at this point, Beast Coast, by losing this game in regulation, were not quite eliminated from major contention. But as soon as we saw, I think, Xset get one point later in the day, which is what they ended up doing, as soon as that happened, they were eliminated. So absolutely heartbreaking loss for Beast Coast. I would have liked to have seen them at the major. I'm sure lots of people would have, just to see new blood, and then this is also just a really exciting team to watch. So yeah, a really tough loss, and I suppose no more to say about it. Let's move on to the next. Final game of the day, Astralis versus Xset. 8-7 scoreline. This is only, the second 8-7 we've seen? We've seen a few other overtimes, but NAL is sort of infamous for not having very many overtimes. We saw, Oxygen versus Parabellum go to overtime, Dark Zero versus Astralis, Space Station versus TSM, and I think the only other round, those are all 8-6s, and I think the only other round 15 we saw was Dark Zero versus Beast Coast, right? So this might have been the most exciting game of the stage. Maybe the game right before this was an absolute shocker, so a very fun one to watch, but this one goes down, absolutely down to the wire. 2 of the better teams in the league, surprisingly so. I think people had them relatively low on the power rankings, and then if you put them high on the power rankings, I think it was a little bit of a shot in the dark, but no, it turned out to be true. Astralis, we'll see if they actually maintain the first place, but they're currently in first place, and Xset is currently in third place after this playday. All right, so we play on Villa, and let's look at the round breakdown. Xset, Astralis, Astralis. So Xset got that first round. So yeah, Astralis is up 3-1, but then Xset gets 2 more. 3-3 half, and then we switch sides. Xset's on the defense, take the first round, 2 more for Astralis. So they're kind of neck and neck. Each team has taken the lead, lost the lead, back and forth a little bit. All right, so Astralis currently in the lead 5-4. Xset get 1, they get another one. Now they're up on match point. They need the 1 more round to get the full 3 points, defeat Astralis. But no, Astralis gets this round, taking it to overtime, and then Astralis gets 1 more. Now they need to win 1 more round, whereas Xset needs to win 2. They get the 1. Round 15. Now, either of them can win. It's 7-7. If Astralis wins, they win the game. They miss out on the 1 point, but, you know, that's a foregone conclusion, and same thing for Xset. Astralis takes it in the end, and, I mean, I think at this point, yeah, they're pretty well proven to be the best team. Yeah, they can get passed by Oxygen if Astralis loses and Oxygen wins. Might have to both be in regulation. There's probably some, like, niche scenarios where that's not strictly true, but... Okay, yeah, Astralis looking really good at the moment, and perhaps NA's best hope in the major? We'll have to see. Yeah, 2/3 of voters in favor of, yeah, this is, I guess, Astralis. The colors are almost identical. They're both red. And 1/3 of voters for Xset, and this could have been maybe closer. Both these teams were absolute killers coming into this. Both were on 5 win streaks, and I suppose this makes a 6 win streak for Astralis. Looking at the stats, Gomez on top, which is, I think, what, his 2nd game on top or something. He might be the worst statistical player for Xset, but he's probably shoring that up a bit by getting a high rating here. DS, good stat line. He continues to die less than, like, anyone else, as you can see. Yaga, another good score line, even below his average, though. I think his average is 1.3 rating. 1.2 in this game is still solid. And then 1.12 from Spirits, also good. And then Kino, the support player, lowest rating, as expected, and it is what it is. Iconic on top here, and you'll notice that, you know, Astralis actually wins the game, but the stats really look like Xset won the game, so I imagine Xset must have had more dominant rounds or fewer, or just more close rounds when they lost, I suppose. Right, so Iconic on top, J9O close behind, and DP Fire close behind him. They all got quite a lot of frags. Shell kind of on the bottom here. I think he's still been one of their best performing players over the course of the whole stage, though, and then Forest down here as well. Not too far, though, you know, -3. It's not the absolutely world-beating performance that he put up on this same map versus TSM, but, you know, they ended up getting the win. I'm sure they would have liked to have won in regulation, but no, they did take the win in the end, and it looks like they're probably going to be the top team at the end of the stage. Okay, so that does it for all of the games, but we will take a look at the standings and the stats, and so I suppose let's do the stats first, and so let's cut over to that. All right, here are the stats leaderboards, and we have Vertical on top by a pretty noticeable margin, 0.11 above Yaga, who is 0.11 above everyone else, so that makes Vertical 0.22 above everyone except for Yaga. 3 Xset players here in the top 5, and they're only the 3rd place team. Vertical is the only Oxygen player in the top 5 here. They're the 2nd place team, and we don't see any Astralis players in the top 5. So I guess that sort of balanced player structure, play style, whatever you want to call it, is really working out for Astralis, and they don't have a star of the show. And I guess, well, if Vertical hadn't been popping off, maybe Oxygen would not be in 2nd place. And I guess, I mean, you know, if these guys hadn't been popping off, maybe they wouldn't be in 3rd place. But maybe if the other 2 players, Gomez and Spirits, had made up for it a little bit statistically, then maybe they could still be here, but whatever, it's just a bunch of conjecture. And Skies remains pretty high up, and Vertical also on top here. Yaga's still 2nd place. Diaz and Skies also appearing, but now laxing in here. Entry, Surf continues to be really high up here. I guess he's been on the top for a while. Maybe he's fallen in and out and whatever. Hyper joining him on the +7. Then we have Yaga, Vertical, and then Newers. There's probably some other players on +5, right? No, he's just the only one, so some other player, a bunch of players on +4 there. And then going over to Cost, Vertical on top as well. Yaga number 2 again. Grixer not appearing on any of these, but his cost is quite high. Hyper here as well, and then Laxing. And then Clutches, Iconic, Eska, NJR, and Drip are apparently the most clutch players in the league. By way of, I don't know, tiebreakers or whatever establishes who's on here, Vertical does not make it onto the leaderboard here, but he does have as many clutches as Wimpy. If we look at this, Vertical also has 3 clutches along with like 6 other players, so it just happens to be Wimpy on here, but effectively Vertical is on the is in the top 5 if you're considering ties and whatever for all 5 of these categories. Not Plants, but we do see his teammate Dream on top, and then a little ways below we see Forest, Marmalade, and Drip, and then Eclipse down here. And yeah, well, we'll look at the full stats at the end of the last day. We'll skip them for now, just for the sake of brevity, and we'll go over to the standings now. Okay, so just like in the previous one, whenever I showed the standings, that is, we have the results from the games over here that I've already talked about, and then we have the standings here. So top to bottom, I'll read them off. Astralis, Oxygen, Xset, Dark Zero, Space Station, Beast Coast, TSM, Parabellum, Sonics, and Mirage. So the first place team at the end of the day could end up being Astralis or Auction or Xset. It's most likely going to be Astralis, obviously, because they have the most points. But if they do end up losing in regulation, it could be Auction or Xset. And even if they lose in overtime, it still could be Oxygen by way of some amount of results. But if they lose in regulation and Auction also loses, then Xset could go up to first place with a regulation win. And then also, you know, it'd have to make up some amount of the round differential too. And okay, so Dark Zero, Space Station, this is going to be the most important matchup. They're 4 and 5 on the standings right now. You need to be in that top 4 to make it to the major. These two teams play each other, and it comes down to just whoever wins goes to the major. So even if Space Station wins in overtime, they'll get 2 points. Dark Zero will get 1 point. That'll put them both on 16, but that would mean, because it would be an 8-6 or an 8-7, Space Station winning in overtime, and they already have the higher round differential, that guarantees they'll have the tiebreaker. So once again, regardless of how it happens, the winner of this game will be going to the major. They'll be secured, I guess, at least 4th place. Either of these teams could, I guess, pass Xset and maybe even Oxygen, depending on how things go down. Beast Coast, yeah, it looks like they can pass them, but because Dark Zero and Space Station play each other, there is no way for them to pass both of them because of the number of points they're on, and then also the round differential here. So yeah, that locks Beast Coast out of the major, and I guess same thing with Xset. They could tie them on points, but their round differential is so much higher that there's no way they can pass them up. I guess, okay, so technically if Beast Coast 7-0'd whoever they play, and which is, what, Oxygen? No, Astralis, I think. And Xset loses 7-0 to whoever it is they play, it would be +8 versus +8, but Xset has the head-to-head over Beast Coast, so there is a situation where it comes down to head-to-head, but Xset does hold that head-to-head, so just narrowly Beast Coast missing out on the chance, but even if things were slightly different, they would still be extremely unlikely to make it. And then we have TSM, Parabellum, Sonics, and Mirage, all pretty close at the bottom, 7-7, 6-6. And TSM plays against Sonics, and Parabellum plays against Mirage. So it's entirely possible for Mirage and Sonics to pass both of these guys, or these two to stay above, and it could end up in whatever order, because in terms of these two, the round differential is quite close, and then I guess these two, it's not quite as close, so possible for Mirage to get out of the bottom, Sonics to jump up a few places, whatever, but none of these teams can pass Beast Coast, and yeah, I guess that's all there really is to discuss. So, right, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, whatever, leave them below. I'd be happy to read them, give you a response. Maybe, you know, probably. I usually respond to them. And, right, like and subscription would definitely be appreciated. So, all right, if there's nothing else to discuss, which I don't think there is for this video, I will catch you guys in the next one.